So my name is Connor Shane. I am the chairperson of Compete Sports Diversity Council. I've been working with them for quite a while. Really excited to be here. I'll do a session a little bit later. We'll have more introductions with a really cool panel. And then we're really excited for the awards tonight. But next up, we had, unfortunately, Will Hackner was not able to be here to host the next session. So Eric is going to do it for us. So round of applause, please, for Compete CEO Eric Carlin.
Who knows we're in Las Vegas? What are some signs that we're in Las Vegas? Anybody? Ding, ding, she saw my cheat sheet. So, like in Arizona, it's mask required except when you're actively eating or drinking. Did anyone notice here it's mask required unless you're eating, drinking, or smoking, like walking to the casinos? So, I had a fun sharing that. Well, welcome everybody. I am so glad to see so many faces out there that really represent sports diversity. And I see a very diverse group too, which is so amazing. I remember when we started the first Compete Sports Diversity Council meeting was in 2014, and there was 4 of us. And we were sitting in the hotel before the Compete Awards figuring out how do we launch this and how do we make it successful and how do we make it meaningful and important. Those are the main things. And so I'm so glad that out of that initial meeting, we turned this into quite a great group of folks. So everybody here, I want to thank you for coming and applaud you for being here today. So Will Hackner from Varsity Gator League was going to be here today talking about something very important, which is the importance of the LGBTQ+ community. So he's not here, so I get the honor to do that. And so why is the LGBTQ+ sports community so important? Any volunteers? Why is it important to you? Visibility, woo, Kenyatta, thank you. I'm so glad that I know most of you here, or at least I'm getting to know you if I don't already know you. You go to a lot of conferences and you don't know the folks, and it's always good to meet them, but I feel like these are really my friends. There's people I haven't seen in 2 years since we were here for Sin City Classic, and it feels like I've never skipped a beat. It's so glad to see everyone and talk to them. Someone who I haven't seen in 2 years is Nina from Asana. Let's give her a round of applause. She's embarrassed. I think we all like to have these masks on because it protects us. Nina's actually getting an award tonight because of the work she's done with Asana and also sports. She has been actively on a board for 25 years. Isn't that amazing? Wow. I think there's people in this room that are younger than 25, and that's what makes it so diverse. The article that Compete Magazine wrote about Nina was called Greatest of All Time. So we're so glad that she's here. And she's really open about her age. She just turned 39. So we shall give her a round of applause for that. I actually ran into Nina today at breakfast. There's not a lot of options here, so we were in the food court. And I've never had breakfast at a pizza place before, so it's quite interesting. It was fun though. And actually breakfast was like $60 because I put 40 in the slot machine on the way. So it was rather expensive as well. But one thing we talked about when we ran into each other is age is just a number, and that's so true. Nina's proud to say she actually is 74. It's in the magazine, so I'm not saying anything inappropriate. And it's just amazing that you can just keep going. Who here knows Connie Wardman, our editor, who unfortunately can't be here due to some issues with COVID? She's going to be 79 this year. So we can all take a licking and keep on ticking. So that's one thing that's one aspect of why the LGBT community is important, is you want to have leaders. You want to look up to people and say, wow, I'm so impressed, not just what you've done, but you're still doing it. Because a lot of people can say, I'm going to retire, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I know that Nina's been getting a huge paycheck as treasurer of Asana. Aren't you on like $150,000 your salary, Nina? So she's doing it for the wrong reason. She's doing it for money. But most of us that are doing this are doing it because it's really important and meaningful to us. And it certainly is to me. I know we have a lot of educators in the room. Who here works in education or for school in any way? So we have a lot of educators in the room because you want to make a difference. And so we're here today to make a difference. When you look around in your room and you think, boy, I'd really like to work with that sponsor. I'd really like to work with that city. I'd really like to work with that organization. What's really nice is, if they're in this room, they are definitely doing it for the right reasons. So everybody here is doing it because they want to be here. Nobody has to be here. So that's why I'm so excited. That's why I'm so excited for the Compete Sports Diversity Council. It's important to the LGBTQ community because you want to be here. You want to be either an ally or a member of the community. So that's really exciting. Who here has seen a great increase in their enrollments over the last 5 years in their LGBT sports? People that are playing and registering for tournaments. It really is growing, and it's really important. One of the things that we get Compete all the time is stories of, well, you literally have saved my life. I saw your article on such and such, and I can really relate to that. And I know that you guys get that in the sports as well. So we're doing this meaningful work together, which is really amazing. So part of the fun thing about being in Las Vegas, it really is a diverse group. You just never know what you're going to see. So it's really interesting. I remember going to my first Pride event. I was 35. I think it was in 2007, I think. And I saw things I never thought I'd see again. And now it's like, oh, I don't even notice it. So the more you get used to something, the more it becomes commonplace. When I think of the reasons that I got involved in LGBTQ plus sports in 2006, when I played the Bingham Cup, because of the sense of camaraderie. I mean, it really is a diverse group in rugby. It's straight folks, it's LGBTQ plus community members. It was women on the men's team. I did have a really good experience playing rugby. It was at the Bingham Cup, and God bless her. I was playing against a male team. They had one woman on the team, and she snarled at me and said, "I'm going to get you," and then I knocked her over. So that's the importance of equity and equality when it comes to sports. It really is a great memory. So I hope you get a lot out of this today. I hope you realize that the community is really who we are. There isn't really, I don't like to define the word community. To me, it's really everybody that wants to make a difference and wants to participate and play sports. Because sport is really a great equalizer, as we all know. So think about that. You're gonna get a lot of information today. We have a lot of events coming up. We have a lot of things in the book. We want you to be aware and know that. We're gonna talk more later, but we have a great conference coming up in Richmond. There's some information in the flyer about it. We'd love to have you attend that as well. We do have some travel packages available for no charge to sports organizers. We have a limited number, so see us if you think you might want to come to that. We also have a great event in March in Seattle. We're partnering with the Seattle Seahawks, and we're doing a conference there as well. So any of these things that interest you, please see us. We are very lucky to have Dirk Smith with us today. Dirk has been our managing editor now for a few months. He started with us in, I think, 2016 as one of our bloggers. He just earned his master's degree. He's getting ready to earn in sports psychology. He's also a videographer, as you can see back by the camera. So we're so grateful for all his talents. And I'd like to introduce him. He's gonna run through the roundtables today and help us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dirk Smith.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry I came in a couple minutes late, so unfortunately I missed JJ's discussion, and you probably saw me set up my camera. It was kind of a close timing with the flight. To introduce myself, my name is Dirk Smith. Some of you might know me as David Smith, so let the confusion continue. I don't care if you call me Dirk or David. So a little story behind that. My dad's name is David Smith. My grandpa's name is John Smith. My dad's name is David John Smith, and I'm David John Charles Smith. The Dirk is to kind of differentiate myself between them, which is always useful. Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. As he said, I have been living in Germany for the past 3 years, so a lot of the work that you see on Compete Network that I write or produce, I've done from Germany directly. I just finished my master's degree in sports psychology at the German Sports University in Cologne. It's one of the largest, thank you. Thank you, and I'm working on doing a PhD. Part of the work I want to do involves LGBT athletes, teams, sports, everything on that front in terms of sports psychology. So not just looking at the sociology, not just looking at the basic diversity and inclusion initiatives, but I want to understand how does, diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, all these things, how do they impact the individual in terms of mental health, in terms of performance, in terms of motivational climate, and all these different things. So my motivation for pursuing the sports psychology degree was on that front because I think there are a lot of things in that front that researchers in general, and even a lot of us, were barely scratching the surface on, so I think we can dig a lot deeper. So if I apologize if some of my articles might seem a little academic on that front, but I'm passionate about this stuff and quite enjoy it. I also, in addition to producing a lot of the content, a lot of the articles, officially as the managing editor, I'm also working with Compete to develop some certification courses for sports diversity and helping people learn and what it means to be a diversity leader, right? So being able to understand, okay, well, you want to be diverse, your organization wants to be diverse and inclusive. Well, a lot of people are easy to talk the talk on that, but we want you to walk the walk, and that's why we're here, right? Because we're walking the walk. We want to not only discuss the things that we're going to discuss in this roundtable session, but the idea of these roundtable sessions is for you to take the information that you discuss from your colleagues and peers and other experts, help you get some new perspectives and new point of views that maybe you didn't consider, and then take that back to your organization, your school, your team, your colleagues and everybody like that, and pass that information along to them and take that kind of action, which I think is really important because, it's not just talking, it's actually taking what we learn and putting it forth into action.
I hope by sharing my story that those struggling with their sexuality and gender identity know that they are not alone, and that Asian athletes feel comfortable to come out in sports because it does get better.
I want to make sure that nobody has to pretend to be someone else or stay in the closet in order to compete, in order to be in their sport, in order to be present in their sport.
Because no matter what happens, we all have the power to be ourselves. And what pride means to me is to be brave, bold, courageable, and all the above. Because no matter what happens, for me, we'll never give up.
I hope that I can provide a role model and demonstrate that being gay is okay. LGBT plus individuals can be successful in sports, in business, in school. And hopefully I can inspire those that are in the closet to come out and show who we are. Once we realize how many of us there are out there, those that are not able to hide will feel the support, and they will be able to live fulfilling lives.
I compete.
And I compete.
Because I compete, finally become stronger in swimming.
And I compete.
And I compete!
We had 5 different roundtables. Did everybody enjoy your roundtables? Good discussions? Yeah. We went around. I sat at a bunch of them, and I know Dirk did too. I think the conversation was unbelievable. We're gonna, I'm gonna let Dirk run the review on it. But we want those leaders to make sure that you're not only saying some of the things that you gave to your roundtables, right? The information that you provided, but also make sure you're pulling in some of the experience that you heard in that round circle, right? So, because that was the point of all of this, is not just the information you provided, but what did you get in return? The only way this works is if we are synergizing our information. That is the key in how we change these metrics moving forward. So, Dirk, you want to start the review?
Sure. All right, so we will go ahead and do the review. So if the leaders of each roundtable, if they want to talk, that's perfectly fine. Or if you'd like to share, have one of the other members of the roundtable also share, that'd be great. Share some stories, share your thoughts, perspectives, talking points, things like that. So we'll just go ahead in the order of the list here. We'll start with Mary. Where are you? Right here. Perfect. So if you want to stand up, come up here if you don't mind, because I want to make sure we get this on camera.
So we spent pretty much the whole time talking about transgender athletes, which is not necessarily what Title IX was intended to help protect, but over the years, especially in the last 10 years, the Department of Justice and the Supreme Court have started to expand sex laws around sex discrimination to also include gender discrimination, gender identity, conforming to gender stereotypes, sexual orientation, that type of thing. And I hate this word, I'm going to use it. We pivoted from talking about how Title IX, the Title IX framework that it creates for issues around gender and safety, in an education context, to talking about the assault on trans rights that we're seeing nationwide and the difficulty on having productive, safe and thoughtful conversations around inclusivity and safety for trans people. So spent a lot of time just giving people a primer on all the different issues and perspectives that people have, because it can be a very challenging conversation for some people. And one of the great things about Compete is the way it tries to level the playing field in terms of people's understanding and create a safe space for everyone to be coming from any issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion with a good, kind heart. We all have strong, positive, good intentions here to make sports safe for all. So that primer was really helpful for everyone. Also talking about how we can create action in our communities, so the importance of collaborating with your local destination, for example, on having conversations on what are you doing to make your community safer? What conversations are you having with your elected officials? How can I help you in those conversations? Is there any advocacy help that I can do so that your conversations with your elected officials are stronger? And then we brought it into just talking about basic needs of safety, making sure that we're not just focusing on the needs of white LGBTQ plus people, but also expanding to include BIPOC people as well, of all sexual orientations and gender backgrounds. Because often issues of safety that affect one marginalized community. Obviously, the specifics are going to be different based on someone's background, but maybe the outcomes are the same, even if the specific motivations might not be. So I thought it was a really fantastic discussion. And does anyone else who was present want to add in anything that we discussed?
No, but you did a great job. Thank you, Mary.
Well, it helped that we had very, very wonderful joiners. So thank you all for being so open and have the heart to listen and learn through all this.
So Angela's topic was sports for everyone.
She also had the biggest group. Good job.
Yeah, it was great.
We had a lot of people that had a lot to say.
That's good.
Yeah, definitely. So in that tone, it is a topic that we could talk about a whole bunch of different things around it. So we did talk about, number one, when we talk about sports in general, the diversity around it, which includes many things, as probably most in this room are LGBTQ plus organizers and things, but there's always, there's race, there's adaptability, there's age, there's religion, there's social backgrounds. One of the new things that we talked about was an economic factor of a player that can't come to the series or to your event, and how could we impact those people, because every part and fashion of sports is about these different parts that we're talking about. We also talked about youth and elevating visibility through education. We had a lot of suppliers. So suppliers are people that from CDDs or something that offer a destination or something that we can work with for the planners or the event people to go to their city. So we were, I would say, heavier on suppliers. So we had a good conversation from their side of how we can be good partners as events people to go to them and say, hey, this is important to our group. Or for them to come to us and say, we have this opportunity in our city to partner with you to make visibility something else within the many things that we spoke about included in sports. So I think the lesson that we learned also is that as a supplier, they have a hard job, that they have to not only think of just one little piece of the pie, but all the pieces of the pie, and they're still trying to figure it out also. So like I said, I think a good point that we kind of left on is we need to become better partners around each other and say, I have this to offer, and this is what I have to offer, and then come together and make something that nobody thought of happen organically. So we had that great conversation. We also had conversation around how impactful sports is in life. We had, I apologize, a principal actually in our group that talked about how impactful it is to have conversation with each of the sports leaders in football and softball and all the other sports about diversity in general when it comes to age, social economic problems, religion, LGBTQ issues, all those things. That it's not just a narrow piece of the pie that we all have to talk about. So again, I feel like it's a topic we could talk about for a long time. Hopefully we can have a greater conversation with the whole group. So something for us to talk about later.
So Joanne, go ahead and come up. Your topic was mental health.
Hi everyone. For those that weren't in my group or our group, I'm Joanne Culver. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a licensed alcohol and drug counselor here in the state of Nevada and in the process of becoming a clinical professional counselor. And so what we talked about in our group is a lot of the same lines as Mary here, about trans issues in sports. And I think it was a good conversation. The concerns about people, trans people participating in a higher level, and the challenges around that. And with the focus on the mental health of the students, that it's an ongoing conversation. There were some pretty strong feelings about trans students in sports. It's particularly from a mental health perspective. At least from, I'm going to speak for myself in what I said with the trans students. Just imagine being 18, 19 years old, and you already are having, all the jitteries that are going on. Well, number one, also that trans, to be trans and in college is a privilege anyway. Most trans and gender nonconforming don't have that opportunity, right? 90% of us are unemployed or underemployed. So if there's a trans youth in college, all right, and passing and doing all the things that they need to do, right? That's rare. So you have that, and then you add on, because some of the discussions, were like about what's going on in the locker room, how do you deal with all that, and I'm not going to speak for anybody else in the group, and I'll let others, speak. And just from my perspective, it is, that individual is going into that locker room, am I going to be accepted? And in many cases, they are not accepted by their peers. Their coaches are bullying. You're only here because you're getting a special privilege. You don't need to be here and belong here. And so some of the challenges, these are societal issues. These are issues that are in some ways beyond the scope of mental health. So, but from the mental health perspective, what do we know about trans youth? We know that, in many cases, they are not supported. We know that, we know that they have the highest suicide rates of all suicide rates. So we know this. I'm gonna pitch my thing to all of you. All right, I did it in my own group, and I'm going to pitch it to you. So anybody know about SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Administration? I don't know all the acronyms, right? They're the ones that drive drug and alcohol federal funding treatment. Okay, so in 2019 was the latest research for L, G, and B. There's no evidence-based research about transgender in substance abuse. All right. So imagine what that means for the treatment, and imagine what, right? LGBT. Ever been in a bar? Right. Okay. All right. So imagine what that means for a trans person. A young trans person that is suffering cultural trauma. All right. And there's no discussion. So write your congressman, write your senator, write the Biden administration. Why is there no research on transgender and substance abuse? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, and we will move on now, Valerie. So, topic of sport and family for foster children and the LGBTQ community.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Valerie Hicks, and I'm the Executive Director of SAFI of Nevada. SAFI of Nevada is one of a network of agencies, nonprofit agencies, that provide treatment, foster care, and outpatient mental health to children throughout the nation. We are in 7 states: Colorado, Nevada, Indiana, Alabama, Ohio, who am I forgetting? South Carolina. I think that's everybody. And so while we're located here, and we certainly are appreciative of being here today, we do want you to know that if you are in other states in the country, those states also may have a SAFI, and you may be able to reach out to them. The reason I came today is because we have seen in the area of foster care tremendous pressure that's been put on children who come into care who identify as LGBTQ. We know that a majority of those children, as Joanne spoke to, they have the highest risk of suicide, they have the highest risk of bullying, and yet they don't have a family to help them sustain that kind of trauma. Our children come into care for the same reasons as all children, right? Abuse, neglect, sometimes sexual abuse, but they have the added a layer of trauma that comes with coming out and identifying yourself as LGBTQ. So many of the teens that we find come into care because their families have kicked them out. And they don't have that family to go to, and they don't have that support. So at the most vulnerable time of their life, as a teenager, as you're looking towards your future, so many of our kids find themselves on the street. And we don't want our kids to be on the street. Right now, Child Haven has sometimes in any given day up to 100 children that are in need of a foster home. And those children that are in need of a foster home, there's only supposed to be 60 there. So that tells you that our community is identifying more and more children that need a home. We find that the children that are in our care can be anywhere from 11 to, in the foster care system, anywhere from 11 to 30% of our children can be LGBTQ. But the challenge is, because of the background and because of their experience, they don't even come out and tell us. They're living with that pain in their own heart in silence. And so we want to create a network of families that can support the needs of all of our children. We find that many of our children are African American, disproportionately African American, particularly here in Las Vegas, where we have about an 8% African American population. There's something like a 50% population of youth in care. And it comes for all the same reasons of discrimination that you have faced. Bias, the microaggressions, all of the things that we know tear down the mental health of an adult, but do so much more damage to the health and the spirit of a child. So we desperately need your help. We need your help whether you're in Las Vegas or in another part of the country. We need your help to get the word out that our kids are good. Society and some of us adults have done some things that make them act in certain ways, but they're good children and they need a home and they deserve that. We need you to understand that our children need to reach out, and when they grow up, they need to have an opportunity to have good jobs so that they don't end up homeless on the street, so that they are able to be the most productive version of themselves possible. And so we talked about in our group the idea of being able to develop some internships, because you can't be what you can't see. And I think that it's even more difficult and more challenging for youth who are LGBTQ, because that's another layer. So if they could be able to connect with folks in your community, that would be a wonderful way to help lift some of that burden, some of that trauma from them and help them heal. At our agency, we have a variety of staff to help support our children in their journey. We have clinicians who have had the cultural competency training to understand what the mental health needs are of the LGBTQ child and the African American child and the Latino child, because all of them come with their own burdens, and we want to be as skillful and respectful as possible as we begin to treat those challenges that they have. But as we've talked, Trey, we were talking about internships, we talked about donations. So much of what we're talking about in terms of sports is not available to our children. When I was growing up back in the day, because I'm 68, who's 70? Who's older than me? Somebody, yeah. Okay. So when I went to school, they had funds, and so the children were able to just go. If you had the skill and you had the desire, you could call the coach and you could be on the team. That's not the way it works anymore, because we have not invested in our schools. We have not invested in our children. And so now you have to pay to play. And so many children who are with their birth families don't have access. But for sure, children in foster care don't have access. So donations that you make allow us to do those extra things that we know our children need, but are not available to them because they don't have the funds. I would say, someone mentioned something about advocacy. I would say that that's the other need that we have. We need you to lend your voice in your respective communities around the needs of our children. There are pieces of legislative policies out, John Lewis's policy, other policies. Pay attention, vote your conscience, vote your need. We have to, as a community of color, as a community of LGBTQ, as a community that might be a little different than the mainstream community, we have to come together. We have to come together, and we have to be able to speak our truth so that the legislators who are there to represent us understand that these are our needs and these are our expectations for our children. I think there may be some other things that I'm forgetting, but I'm going to ask Trey. Trey, is there anything else?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did talk about, obviously, was the donation side of things. I just want to get clarification from you, Caitlin. So when we talk about donations, are we talking about just funds, or are we talking about, is there sports equipment that we can donate to our local communities? Is there certain different types of donations that our organizations can give back to the youth, in a sense that might not necessarily always be funds? So, I just wanted to clarify on that, just so everybody.
Absolutely, thank you.
So one of my colleagues, Jillian, and I manage our donation closet, which we fill up every Christmas usually, but we need these things throughout the year. Because when kids come into care, sometimes they come with literally just the clothes on their back. So we take donations of clothes, comfort items, and then, things like sports equipment. It's so much easier to get a foster parent's buy-in to take them to all the games, to take them to all the things, when we're able to help support them by providing some of the equipment so that they're able to do that. So yes, absolutely, funds are great, but so are those physical items as well.
And for those of you who are local, and I think Bruce and Victor are local, where'd you guys go? Okay. So they have a manufacturing firm. Bruce has a firm that makes mattresses. I want my kids to talk to Bruce. I want my kids to talk to Victor because I want them to know what manufacturing looks like, both on the floor, but up here too. How do you own a company? How do you develop that entrepreneurial spirit? I don't want my kids to survive. I want them to thrive. And I've seen that happen when we've had the right kinds of parents step forward, when they've had the right resources. I was sharing with the group that a few weeks ago I attended the college graduation of one of our youth. And the year he started his freshman year, his mom was found in the car dead from an overdose. The foster parent, no longer getting funds from Clark County because the child had turned 18, they supported this child as he went through school. Now the financial aid was there, but he needed someplace to go when summer breaks came, when Thanksgiving came. He needed someone to encourage him when times got tough. And he needed somebody sometimes to just throw him a few extra bucks. And that's what they did. And so when I went to the party, I was so happy because not only did I see my young man who was doing so well, but I met his girlfriend, and she too was a college graduate. She had gotten her degree in nursing. And you know what that told me? We've changed the trajectory of that child's life. He won't be dying in the car like his mama did. He will have access to medical care. He will have access to mental health care. He will have a job with a living wage. And that's all we want. Because when we do that for them, guess what they do? They pay for my Social Security. So we can all talk about it in different ways. Different things attract you at different times in your life. But honestly, there's nothing better than giving back to a child. So I invite you to contact SAFI of Nevada. And if you are in another state, contact us and we will connect you with that other state. Yes?
Can you tell me what the acronym means?
You know what, I always forget to do that. It's Specialized Alternatives for Families and Youth. Thank you.
And finally, we have Bree on the topic of healing domestic abuse and the LGBTQ community. So come on up, Bree.
All right. Personally, thank you to Valerie and Saki at the adopted kids that came out of the foster system. So kudos. Give it up one more time. I don't know how I'm gonna follow this. All right. So our topic was healing, which is a big word, healing the epidemic of domestic violence in the LGBTQ community. We started basically with the conversation that you can't heal anything you don't know exists, right? And what are some of the factors that in our community and our society as a whole, what's preventing from people knowing about the issues that we have as LGBTQ people, specifically with domestic violence? One topic that came up was embarrassment. I know for straight, cis women and men that come into our facility, Work for Safeness, which is the only domestic violence shelter within Southern Nevada for battered women and children. It's an amazing program. If anybody wants any information about it, I do have some flyers and stuff I can hand out to you, especially if you're local. Just good for you to know overall what your resources are as an adult. But basically, embarrassment, right? Embarrassment to say that as a gay man, I got beat up by another gay man. But that's the same as a gay woman. If I got slapped around by my girlfriend, especially as I am masculine presenting. What does that look like in society? Is anybody going to care? Are the police going to care? Are the court systems going to care? Are my peers going to care? We also talked about kind of the relationships we have with our family and the dynamics that takes place in that, and how that kind of leads into a situation where domestic violence may be more prevalent and you may be tolerating it more. How can you leave a relationship when you have nowhere to go, right? And if you do go somewhere, who's gonna care? Who's gonna make sure that you're okay, and not out on the street and trying to survive? So you stay in a relationship because you don't have anything else to go to. And that's for everybody in general, but specifically for LGBTQ people. I do feel that we have a profound amount, and it's been covered by several other people, of homelessness and rejection, on top of being with somebody that you love that's going to then abuse you and kind of put you out if you don't do as you're told. Also, I just want to do one thing right now. If anybody can just stop what you're doing just for a second and close your eyes. Just for 1 second. Just for 1 second. And it's going to get a little morbid, so I promise I will lighten the mood up just a little bit after this. But as you close your eyes, I want you to visualize a victim of domestic violence. What do they look like to you? What do you see? It may look like you. It may look like someone you know. All right, go ahead, open your eyes for me. And I want you to look around with your eyes open. And I can almost guarantee you that the person sitting next to you has encountered some form of domestic violence before in their life. Whether that be coercion, whether that be physical, mental, sexual, however you see it. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. But you're here today. You're here today as LGBTQ people, or as allies, or as just athletes. So the second thing that we actually talked about is sports influences in that. Miles and I, we run an organization with SafeNest called Coaching Boys into Men and Athletes as Leaders. It's a healthy relationships training for the youth, specifically for athletes. We would love to spread that out to everybody else, but our program is specifically for athletes and coaches, and what coaches can do for their athletes as far as LGBTQ players, administrators, other coaches, and how they can be as Miles is a coach here for DPAC. He coaches for the football team there, and how he can be an ally for future LGBTQ young men and women in locker rooms and sports setting, and how he can help them be healthier in their relationships and identify healthy relationships sooner rather than later, so that those individuals can then become coaches and pass on that trajectory and kind of, like you were saying, change the path in which maybe some of us were led on. So if you guys, like I said, need any information from us, I would love to talk to you afterwards and see how we can probably partner and potentially link up. If we could bring our program to you, facilitate some great, amazing coaches for kids who obviously need it. Anybody else who has any questions? There's a principal in here. If you need us, our goal is to be in the schools, charter schools, CCSD, but it's harder than it seems. So if you guys have any tips and tricks for us, we'd love to hear. I appreciate everybody who shared in our group, and if anybody wants to share more. And I think the most thing that I got out of our group was just perspective. I can only live my life with the perspective of I'm Hispanic, but I look white. I'm gay, and I present masculine, and I have my own set of problems, but we had a group full of a lot of different people. And perspective is something that I want to continue to cherish and embrace, and so if anybody wants to come up and chat, feel free. We're all friends here, and if anybody wants any information about SafeNest, it's an amazing program. So.
All right, so to finish this off, I'm going to put a few people on the spot, but first, Sam, we have a little bit of an announcement we'll do real quick, and this is going to be very important. I want this to happen now because there's a point to what I'm going to make after this, but this is going to be fun.
Well, I just wanted to just briefly touch upon Angela's part about suppliers and so on. You know, the the intersection between finances and sports is well documented through the years. The intersection between commerce and sports was really due to Linda, who taught our organization that commerce is a big part of organized sports and how everything works. A big bit of gratitude to you years ago teaching us that commerce and sports is a very big intersection. We now use that year after year after year. And it's really your tutoring that brought that to the forefront years ago. But a quick shout out to, I wear several different hats, football and softball. And I was running a football, the Gay Flag Football World Series of football. It was in Canada. The government wasn't allowing us to go into Canada. We were in a very large pickle. We decided to put it on in Tempe, Arizona. We were having some difficulties. And finally, I was in Tempe and went to the Tempe Convention and Visitors Bureau representative. I didn't know what to say. We were about ready to back out. We didn't have the funds. We were very short. So I had a meeting with the Tempe, CVB, and I said, I don't think this is going to happen. And he said, well, he just said yes. I haven't asked you anything yet. He says, we got you here. Yes. I said, but I'm $10,000 short. And Tempe Convention and Business Bureau said, we got you. That intersection between commerce and sports has never been more alive. We need to utilize that. I can't believe Tempe did that. Not only did they come through with a yes before I even asked, but they also helped us negotiate contracts, and a big bit of gratitude to the Tempe CVB. I know you're here, and I know it was your counterpart before you, but thank you so much. And a big gratitude for Linda. You guys are a big part of our world now, and it was really due to Linda who merged that and taught us and tutored us how to do that. So now every tournament, instead of being behind tournaments, they're now in front of tournaments. Thanks to John, Richmond is now in front. We're now in a location because of John and Richmond, and we don't even have a city there. So not only are they behind where we're going, they're in front of where we're going for the first time. So an interesting perspective on the financial side and the intersection between commerce and sport. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Tempe. Thank you.
I love that, and the commerce piece is really important, something that we're going to touch on too as we finish out these roundtables. So the commerce is based on connections, right? Communications, everything here that we have just shared, our intellectual capital. I use that word a lot because it means a lot to me. That intellectual capital in my mind, capital is those resources we have to sell and to trade. Intellectual capital is everything that we have and we can trade with each other. Roundtables are sometimes tough, but you guys killed it. Awesome job. Now, the reason I think they're sometimes tough is because there are some people that sat in roundtables but wanted to hear from 2 or 3 different ones. Yes, is that fair? There's a lot of topics here you wanted to share. So I'm going to ask 3 people, and if you want to volunteer, I will call on you. I'm going to call on you, Paul. So if you don't volunteer, I will call on you. But I want you to ask one question to one group that you are not a part of so that we can increase this sort of synergy, right? I think most of the time we sit there and say, oh, I want to meet with Valerie later. I want to touch base with you a little bit later, even though I wasn't in your session. I didn't get to ask you those questions later. So 3 questions, and then we'll close it out. Ask one question to a group that you didn't have publicly in front of everybody, and then I want you to answer the question so that we can all share in that sort of intellectual commerce and intellectual capital.
Question for Bree and those in the healing domestic abuse and the LGBTQ community. I'm wondering what discussions you all had around what policies event organizers in particular could be putting in place to help make it easier to keep people safe in these kind of situations. Because I know the more overlapping connections you have between you and someone that's doing you harm, the harder it is to address it and keep people safe. So I'm curious what kind of discussions came up there and next steps and policy development and stuff.
I will say that my group definitely got a little bit carried away with a bunch of tangents. We didn't even actually hit policy, but it is a really amazing question, especially as far as me representing safeness. Safeness is very big on working politically to try to drive change within the Las Vegas area. Granted, that's very small, but right now, our biggest thing, Miles and I's biggest thing, is trying to work within the school district, which is very, very limited on what they will allow an outside organization or program to let in and speak with their kids. And our program's free. It's completely free. But as of last January, we just found out that the school district will not allow any outside program to speak about relationships in general. So right now, that policy and what they have created in that is something that we really need to talk about and improve. But again, Safe Nest, if you guys live here and look up Safe Nest, they have done amazing work before me. I can't take credit for it. But yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
So
sure.
we also have a volunteer-based program, a partnership with Metro, the local police department, called PS 417, Project Safe 417, which is the code when they go out on domestic violence calls. And that program is basically designed to have advocates go out with Metro when they respond to domestic violence calls. So we have volunteers that come in, they go through a pretty much like a training to get knowledgeable about what domestic violence looks like, how you can respond effectively to domestic violence. And they go out on calls with Metro to pretty much advocate and support and just be there as a support system for victim survivors in those situations. So that's probably, I would say, one thing I want to highlight for sure in terms of being on the, hopefully on the preventative side of domestic violence as well.
So I was in the Sports for Everyone group. I moved up here because I was behind the pillar. And one thing that we kind of hit on, Sports for Everyone, we kind of hit on topics that every other one of these groups hit on, was economic inequality. So my question for the foster children group was, what can we do? You talk about internships, and one of the biggest hurdles with internships is the fact that a majority of them are unpaid, and a lot of people at that level can't work for 30 to 40 hours a week and not being paid. What can we do as someone who offers internships? What can we do to make them more accessible to people who need them? And like you said, you can't be what you can't see. So how can you take that a step further? What can we do with those, and how do we make the internships more valuable to people in those situations?
We have an independent living worker. That's the person whose job it is to make sure that our youth get connected with the kinds of resources that they're going to need as they grow up and grow out, right? So it would be wonderful to be able to talk to you about what are some of those positions that you might have, and look at our children and see if they have an interest in them. And if they do, connect you with those youth so that they can hear what kind of education do they require. What is the financial outlook for that kind of job? They need to just experience it. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a paid internship. It could be maybe a week shadowing. If it's spring break, maybe they could just go and see what it is that you're doing and begin to develop a relationship with you around that. Are there any other things you can think of? No. But we can talk and we can think of some more. Maybe you can help me.
So would it be with shorter periods of shadowing, would that work better than a full-term internship?
Yes, I would say for our youth, because of two reasons. One, they sometimes are moving around, right? They may change homes, they may be reunified, and while we have them, we have much more opportunity to influence where they go. So I think that if it's a shorter program, something that's 4 sessions, 3 sessions, to whet their appetite. The other thing is a lot of our kids are 14. They're too young to work, but they're not too young to begin to think about what it is they'd like to do and begin to orient themselves towards that educationally. So I think that shorter opportunities for children who might be a little bit younger than you may have been thinking. You may have been thinking 16, 17, and I'm thinking 14 through 18. And so we can talk and look at what that might look like down the line. One question, are you connected at all to Workforce Connections?
I am not. No.
Okay. So the Workforce Connections is a county program that is designed to help link our citizens with jobs. But they do have a component that is for teenagers, 14 and up, and they have a paid internship. So the other thing is, I know that they need jobs, they need sites for their youngsters to go to. there may be an opportunity for me to link you with the people at Workforce Connections, people who have internships, because they have all the mechanism to do that. The paperwork things, all the things that the youth have to have in order to be able to work. They are able to help assist in that. So one of the things I'm thinking is, even though it takes you a little bit outside of my domain, I think it can help in a broader way, is to connect you with some of the existing programs and see where you might be able to lend an internship opportunity.
Also, and I'm not sure, are you in North Carolina?
I am in North Carolina.
I guess from the shirt. I'm from North Carolina, so. But some states actually will offer scholarships for organizations that will give these internships to these kids. So they will essentially make it a paid internship, but you're not the one that's paying for it. An outside source is paying for it, so that the kids are still able to access those opportunities and pay for them, because most of our kids can't afford to do a full internship unpaid. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool, nice job. I'm actually going to cut it right there. We're going to stay on time. So sorry if you had a question, but again, move forward afterwards. Meet those people. We'll follow up with that virtual conference. But this is kind of the important piece that we're talking about. This kind of intellectual capital is extremely important to share. It's the only way that we again move those metrics forward. So next topic, I'm going to introduce Compete CEO again, Mr. Eric Carlisle.